I guess this thing's on. Yeah, okay, good. I heard someone talking about it. I heard the word ball game. I guess we had to get that, replay that game. Maybe I could tell by looking around to see who's smiling, who's frowning, right? Good morning. All right, good. So we are alive. Got a pulse. That's good. Hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. You know, we are very blessed. You know, we probably heard the stories from our. Now, wait a minute. I get that a lot. She's all right. So that's one advantage is to teaching a class. You get to say, that's Joanna, that's my granddaughter. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. There we go. She's happy now. So I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. You know, we're very blessed in this country, and you know, for the most part, I think most of us in here, for the most of our lives, have had just about everything that we wanted. We may remember the days when, some of us may remember some of the days a little bit tougher, a little harder, but, you know, some of us lived a long life with about everything definitely of everything that we needed and a lot of what we wanted. And it's so good to be thankful and turn our minds, you know, towards those who are not so fortunate, not so well off. You know, they're in our neighborhood. They're not that far away where there's people like that. And it's a challenge to each of us to not just turn inward and to look outward. And I know many of you do a very good job in recognizing that and sharing the things that you have with others. So we're in Ecclesiastes, chapter 7. Remember, we talked about the preacher, Kohelet in the Hebrew, given the kind of this comes from a confessional view, kind of my life's lessons. These are the things that I've done. And it's very important to go all the way through this and kind of, it repeats itself in a lot of different ways. He keeps on making the point over and over and over and over. The futility of things in life, the temporal part of life. He talks about under the sun over and over again, trying to drive us home. It's easy for us to read, to pick out the easy things out of the book and want to we can make cute little lessons out of it that sound good. And they're of value. What's difficult is to take each of these verses, because we don't talk that way. That's not. I don't know if we got any Hebrew scholars in here, but I'm not a Hebrew scholar. But we rely on other scholars and sharing with what the word actually means, how it's translated. And what's interesting, the one thing that I have learned about Hebrew is there's so few words in comparison to like our English language that has so many. So where they have a word, they have to determine what that means by the context. An example is one of the first words that we come to in chapter 7, verse 1. Does yours say, does it say a good name, the word good? And then it says it's better. It said it is better. Well, that is actually translated from the Hebrew word that means good, both the good and the better. Because in the Hebrew, they have to determine that they're showing that this is in comparisons. So then that's how they then translated that you come along and you come get the idea of it being better rather than just saying a good name. So Hebrew is a difficult study. And so my point in bringing that out is that it really does us good to look at different, go back and do word studies, look at different translations of the text, and that will help us because sometimes one does very good and the other doesn't do quite so well. I want us to grab one little tidbit, another little treasure out of chapter 6 before we go on to chapter 7. And it's the book of Ecclesiastes is a book of phrases. The under the sun, chasing after the wind, the futility of, and here's another key word is in verse 12 of chapter 6 says, "For who knows what is good for a man during his lifetime, during the few years of his futile life? He will spend them like a shadow." A shadow. So when you think of your studies in the Bible, what comes to your mind when it talks about a shadow? What else do we know? And this is New Testament. What else do we know that is given that concept of a shadow? Pardon? Reflection? Yeah, and Larry, in specific to what, though? You're right, in reflection of what?
Reflection of yourself.
Yes. I'm looking for Hebrews concept. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 5. Concept. What are we told the Old Testament is? It's a shadow. Shadow of things to come. So what the point is there is that just as those things, he's talking about all the rituals of the Torah, of the old law, the things that they did, that they were what? They were temporal, right? They wasn't permanent. And so it represented something else. So it's telling us there's meat in this word shadow. It's telling us that we are temporal. And so what are we representing? What does our life represent? So you get the idea that, hey, we are representing ourselves while we're here. Back to what Larry said, we're representing ourselves, but we're representing it in this temporal body. So what is our representation? So when you look at the Old Testament articles, they were all holy, right? All those things were commanded by God, and they were holy. And so we are to be holy and acceptable unto God. And so what is our shadow? What is the reflection of us? How does our shadow? And to understand the main point is to not only understand that we are a reflection, but that it is temporary. Because we like to think life is forever. That's easier. That's more comfortable. And that's what's going to make this next chapter so difficult, is because it gets us into the area that we generally don't like to go to. And so he starts out by says, a good name is better than good ointment. Okay, there we go again. Going back to the Hebrews and the idiom. Somebody tell me what that means. How are we comparing a good name to a good ointment? Kind of we go like this, right? That don't make sense to me. A good name, if you have a good name, Ronnie, you got a good name, what does that mean? Somebody says that Ronnie's got a good name. What does that tell us about Ronnie? You got a good name, Larry. What does that tell us about you?
My grandma used to always tell me, don't make my name stink.
Okay. Don't make your name stink, okay.
I knew exactly what she
Or that was stank, what you said, wasn't it?
stank.
Yeah, not stink, it's stank. Okay.
Don't make my name stink.
All right.
And she didn't have to explain that to me.
Okay, didn't have to explain it. So the opposite of that is the pro is what? We have a good reputation. Our character is good. So we have a good character. So now what's the idea about the ointment? Remember, we're in contrast. We're in contrast. It says a good ointment. It's telling you what kind of ointment is. Let me change the word for you a little bit. Perfume. Well, what does that mean? Smells good, right? Yeah. Okay. So what's the contrast? Well, yeah, kind of. Yeah, kind of. What's the contrast?
I think we will be judged and acknowledged in the name that we earned rather than one that our mother gave us.
Okay. Very good. All right. Come on. What's perfume? All right. Well, some of you ladies, what do you put perfume on for? Huh? Make you smell good, huh? Where does it go? The outside, right? The outside. It represents the outside. A good ointment, a good name is better than a good covering. So I cover myself with a really good perfume because and then we're going to get there. Where are we going when we're putting on that really good perfume? We got choices, right? We got choices where we can go when we put on that really good perfume. And one is we can carry this good name, this good character, this good reputation with us when we go, or we can carry this outside covering of this is what I look like from the outside and really not be the idea of the content of character. Right? So it says, and the days of one death, actually the word ones is added, it says actually the day of death is better than the day of one's birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. Because the end of every man and the living takes it to the heart. All right, now wait a minute. It's better to go to the house of mourning. Why? Why do we want to go to the house of mourning? Why do we want to go to the house of mourning? Rather than to go to the feast, or we would say today, go to a party. We're going to go party and enjoy ourselves. It's really talking about just really going out there and living up life. Why? Why is it better? Everybody heard of Michael Jordan, right? Everybody heard of Michael Jordan? Considered by most the greatest of all time basketball player. Well, I don't know. I watched his Hall of Fame basketball induction speech. You want to talk about arrogant? Now he proved everything that he said, but you want to talk about arrogance? I mean, he was right there. He was pointing people out. He even had his high school teammate who had actually beat him out of the team. And he's saying, and there that guy, his game never changed. But here I am. I'm the one who's giving the speech. Oh, what a character that he could be. And a lot of times that's how come they get that good, because they have that kind of confidence, right? But I don't know if any of you saw the Kobe Bryant Memorial. If you get a chance, Google this. Michael Jordan speech at Kobe Bryant's memorial. If you don't know, Kobe Bryant was another NBA player that was tragically killed in a helicopter crash. Michael Jordan is up there, tears running down his face. He can't hardly even see out here what he's looking to. He can't see what's going on, hardly. And he's just crying, and he's just crying. And what he talks about is about Kobe, not about how good he was as a basketball player. That's not the main thing that he gets out. He talks about how good a father Kobe was. He talks about what a good friend Kobe was. He talks about what a good husband Kobe was. All those things that you'd see here, but in the shadow or in the presence of death. Our perspective changes. Our perspective is a lot different in the house of mourning, or we would say a funeral setting, in looking in death. And we don't like to look at death. We try to hasten it everything about it as quick as we can, but we still have to deal with it. But he's saying that we need to, there's where we find our perspectives. The story is about the woman that was on the Titanic, pretty wealthy woman, matter of fact. And so she's on the Titanic, and the Titanic's going down. And she's one of the lucky ones that's getting to go out on the lifeboat. And she says, hey, can I go back to my cabin? The one that was over the lifeboat said, I'll give you 3 minutes. 3 minutes to go back to your cabin. She runs a casino. There's money everywhere. Everywhere. Laying in piles everywhere. And she gets back to her stateroom and runs into that stateroom, and she has all of her diamond jewels. They're laying everywhere. Her necklaces, her bracelets, all those diamonds. And there was 3 oranges, and she went up there and grabbed those 3 oranges. And she run back to that lifeboat because she was staring death in the face. Death changes our perspective. We don't think the same way. We begin to think right when we look at death. When we get to that, when we actually look death in the face, we start asking the right questions. We start changing our perspective of because if you ask a preacher, matter of fact, I've heard ministers say this before too. You know, they get asked sometimes, why don't you go to one of these ball games and just stand up on a box and start preaching? Let's just start preaching. And the preacher says, they watching a ball game. They don't want to listen to spiritual things. He says, but I go to a funeral. He says, I have everybody's attention. Everybody's listening. So he's saying that we have to go to that place in our lives of going to the house of mourning. And when we cheat ourselves on that, we cheat ourselves in correcting. That brings us back. He's not saying, he says it's good to go to a feast. It says in here it's good to enjoy things, but it's better to go to the house of mourning. Any thoughts or comments? Verse 3, that's why it goes on, says sorrow is better than laughter, for when a face is sad, a heart may be happy. Somebody please turn to Luke chapter 6, verse 25. Please read Luke chapter 6, verse 25. Now let's look at Matthew 5, chapter 5, verse 4. Blessed are they that mourn. So Christ echoes the same party. That's okay. But if you lose the sight of death, again, we don't talk about it. We don't like talking about it. But it needs to be talked about. We need to look at it. It's a hard thing for us to do. Verse 4 says, for the mind of the wise is in the house of mourning, while the mind of fools is in the house of pleasure. Verse 5, it says, it's better to listen to the rebuke of a wise man than for one to listen to the song of fools. Some more wisdom here he's sharing. Remember, in all this feasting, all this partying, there's a lot of music, right? Think about music today. There's good music, and there's bad music. And here he's saying it's better to listen to a rebuke. I don't know that anybody really ever likes to be rebuked. You like to be rebuked? Matthew, did you enjoy that growing up when an old man would rebuke you? Was that?
You're gonna rebuke me?
We don't like to be rebuked, right? We don't enjoy that. But he said it's better than to live this life of just partying and listen to the music that we shouldn't listen to. Yes.
You remind me of an uncle of mine. He was an old drunk. But when he was sober, he was a wise, very wise man. If he could have stayed away from that bottle, he could have been a very successful man. But he told me I was getting ready to go off to college. It might help these boys here. I was getting ready to learn. He said, you see, told me the fools. He said, you see these old guys down at the Dewdrop Inn? They right down the street at Dewdrop Inn. He said, you see how they just standing around, ain't talking about nothing, ain't doing nothing, ain't going nowhere. He said, when you go off to college and come back, those same guys gonna be down there doing the same thing. Make sure you don't join them.
Make choices, right? When you go. I don't know that to the point of the kind of the content here that we'll get them, any of those college boys to go to a funeral, but if we can just keep them out of the feast, the partying, right? The party lifestyle.
The fools better be rebuked.
Yes.
Fools.
Yes.
He was saying those were fools down there.
Yeah.
Don't be a fool like them.
Verse 6, now this might be a little confusing again. It says, for as the crackling of thorn bushes under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. What does that mean? For the crackling of the thorn bushes under the pot. That's not one of our phrases, is it? I don't remember hearing that phrase before. So let's think about it. We all, or many of us, right, has gathered up a bunch of brush and stuff to start a fire, right? You've done that, haven't you, Ronnie? You gather a bunch of it up. You got to have something to help start that fire, right? And to help, and so you get all the easy burning stuff. It's real dry, and you put it under there, and you light it. So you got a pot here that you're wanting to heat up, and so then you light that. And then what do you hear? A bunch of crackling, snapping, and popping out of a bunch of those weeds. You know, you've heard that before, right? Snap, pop. Don't use gasoline. So now, tell me something. What does all that crackling do to heat up that pot? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. All that crackling you hear it, but it doesn't do anything. It's worthless, that crackling is. So that's what he's saying here. He's saying, hey, for as the crackling of the thorn bushes under a pot, so is the laughter of a fool. This is futility. There is no value. Kind of going back to what Larry said again, a fool. Just a noise. Which, sometimes we're guilty of that noise, right? That's when he went back about making all, remember earlier we studied about making all the vowels, V-O-W-S. Making those vowels. It says be quiet, listen to a rebuke. Okay, it says, verse 7, for the oppression of a wise man mad, and a bribe corrupts the heart. The oppression makes a wise man mad, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Again, in context of the party life, it goes against the Torah. What does the Torah teach? The two main points of the Torah was what?
Love their God with all their heart, mind, body, and soul.
Yeah, that's one. And two,
Neighbor as yourself.
love your neighbor as yourself. When you have oppression, when you have oppression present, you also have bribes. Think about Haiti. Haiti right now, how corrupt that is. How the corrupt that, I don't know if you've seen the news just recently. You know, they had people hostage again, held them hostage, and it's taken away from their own people. You know, like the peanut butter thing, for instance. We talked about, you know, how we done the peanut butter drive. Do you know what one of the main things that Haiti produces, one of the main crops that they produce and export? Peanuts. Peanuts. Well, we send peanut butter down there and give to the orphans. In this place, but you know what happens is all these people take that money and they steal it. They take it, and it's not given. They have people dying in front of them. They have people that they don't help their own people out. Even if there's somebody that decides, hey, I'm going to do the right thing and I'm going to sell my peanuts to help my own country, it's taken from them. Well, oppression makes a wise man mad. We understand that now. In life, it makes that oppression, it makes him mad. Makes a wise man mad, and a bribe corrupts the heart. It says, verse 8, the end of a matter is better than the beginning. You know, again, in context of what he's saying is, and the idea of a feast or idea of party is, let's look at it this way. Let's look at it again as a wedding. Weddings are happy, right? Everybody's happy. Maybe not the bride's father, right? Everybody's happy. So we'll just say everybody's happy, okay, Sammy? We'll just say that. But everybody's happy. And then you have all these vows that they're making to each other. And so when we look, we say, hey, again, in this context, he's saying, look at the end. Don't look at the beginning. Because all vows is a crackling of the pot. That's all the vows are. That's all the vows are. They're the crackling at the pot. But the end, show me what the end is. They're not here, but Leo and Hazel, how many years is it? 72? 74 years married. Show us people that's been married 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 74 years. And it's went through all these things in life. Now you see something. When you see the people in here that we've witnessed, and we've had several that stood by their mate that was going through something that was end of life. And we saw the husbands stand right beside their wives' side. The end is better. The end is better. Just the opposite. The wives that stand right beside their husband's life. And they're right there for every moment. You look at those. That's the people that we need to be. There's where the ones that we say, hey, look at this. Look at what this. It's not the ones that run out. And yes, there are people, even people in the church, that where someone runs out. and leaves that mate. That's not what we want to look at, right? He says the end is better. The end result is that when the people have stayed there, then the vows have become true who the person is. No longer is it a vow. It's character. It's that reputation, that good reputation. We have several here, and I would start to name them, but I know I've missed somebody, so I'm not going to start it. You know who they are. The people that we have several in this room today that have stood right beside their mate. And he says, the end is better than the beginning. Patience of spirit is better than haughtiness of spirit. Again, the same thought. I thought she was a lucky person. Boy, was I wrong. You didn't have to laugh. No, I was like that haughtiness.
Amen.
You didn't have to amen either. Now you amen. That haughtiness a lot of times comes when I started in the trade. You know, I thought I was a machinist by trade. I thought, boy, I'm really good. I'm really good. I found out, no, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. And that's what he's saying is that character, that those choices that we make, you got to make them all the way through your life and build that character, because we're not eternal. We're temporal as far as here upon this earth, under the sun. Under the sun, it's all temporary. And Solomon / Kohelet could not make total sense of that. But we do see wisdom here. We saw where he was questioning at the end of chapter 6. He's questioning God, and we compared what Job was saying. Hey, who am I to question God? Solomon says, I'm questioning God. But yet he has all this wisdom that he's sharing with us now. It says in verse 9, it says, do not be eager in your heart to be angry, for anger resides in the bosom of fools. I think that one's pretty easy, right? Sometimes, again, in life, we believe it's all about us, and that goes back to that character. And so we have to ask ourselves, what are we getting angry about? What makes us angry? Christ got angry, right? What did he get angry about? He goes into the temple, right? What does he get? What is really the source of his anger? Is it anger? Is he angry that they've done something against him? Disrespecting his father. Disrespect. Do we in the house of mourning, do we get grieved by things that are going on in disrespect to God? Or are we more grieved about, I don't know, Austin didn't preach the sermon I wanted him to preach today? Or are we more grieved about, what are we grieved about? So it's saying those things that in life that we become, says, do not be eager in your heart to be angry. He doesn't say that being angry is a sin. Be ye angry and sin not, right? Do not be eager. Don't be looking for ways, because anger resides. People that's looking for a battle. And we have known people that way. I've known people in the church that way, that was always looking for an argument. That's not a good character. A good character is someone that takes away that haughtiness, takes away that always looking to try to trip somebody up, and looks for a way to make people successful. A peacemaker. It says, and here's a good one, that now that I'm getting older, that says, do not say, is it that the former days were better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask about this. Remember us talk about the good old days? He says, don't live there. That's not where we're supposed to live. It's okay to know about the good old days if we want to have a good memory of the good old days. But me bringing it up to the next generation, we done all this right, and we're back. I wish we was doing back this way again. I wish we was doing that. Wish we was doing this. We're here. Live today, where you are today. Don't live in yesteryear. That's gone. That's over with. There's not anything that we can do with that, nor change that, even if we wanted to. Forget about the former days, and let's move forward. You know, it doesn't mean that we're not concerned about things. It means that we're not concerned about the future, but we're concerned about the future, not comparing it to the old days. So a lot of things that we kind of like to do, he's saying don't do it. Wisdom along with an inheritance is good and an advantage to those who see the sun. There's another little phrase. It's an idiom in Hebrew. To see the sun. What does that mean? What is he saying? He is. That's part of it. To see the sun. Well, let me add a couple more words to it, and then maybe you'll understand the idiom. To see the sun come up. What's the first thing a Jew does in the morning when they get up? They pray. It's the very first thing that they do. He said, an inheritance is good. Things that are left, things, positive things, looking forward, that's good. But the advantage to those who pray first, that have their mind in prayer, that they're looking for God, looking to God, rather not to themselves. For wisdom is protection just as money is protection. An advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the lives of its possessors. Consider the work of God who is able to straighten what he has bent. So, stopping there, I want you to go back to, before next week, go back to chapter 1, verse 15, and then this chapter 7, verse 13, and read them and see how they are different. Thank you.
We both like it. I would be in that side category.